But Gauteng Community Safety MEC Faith Mazibuko has again called on society to work together in ending gender-based violence. Mazibuko was speaking in Middleland, Soweto, after visiting the family of Tsegofatswa Pule yesterday. Pule's lifeless body was found hanging from a tree with stab wounds in Roodepoort in Johannesburg last Friday. The death of the 28-year-old expectant mother has caused outrage, with many calling for justice on social media. Police have opened a case of murder. Earlier, Police Minister Bheki Cele had announced that there were over 120,000 gender-based violence calls in only 3 weeks into the lockdown. Let's now get a reaction to the situation from Ngaa Murombedzi. She is Advocacy Manager from Women and Men Against Child Abuse, and she joins us now live via Skype. Good afternoon to you, Ngaa. Thank you so much for coming through. So here we are again, talking about the same issues, the gender-based violence, women being killed. It's not just Tsegofatswa. There is also a story of a lady who was reportedly and allegedly killed by her husband as well.
Good afternoon, Palesa, and thank you very much for the invitation. Just watching that vigil for Tsegofatswa, you begin to see how people are trying to find a way to understand these things. And you said a very scary number, 120,000 calls of gender-based violence within 3 weeks. That is staggering. It is shocking to even begin to imagine what people are going through behind closed doors. And for somebody to lose their lives in the way that Tsegofatswa did shows that there is a type of hatred within our society, because that is not a crime as if somebody robs somebody else and stabs them. This is a premeditated, vengeful, hateful crime. And it's exacerbated by the fact that this woman was 8 months pregnant. That is a child that shouldn't have been born, would have been viable and, carried on to live. And then there's Naledi in Mossel Bay, who was killed by a partner. Again, an element of intimacy, an element of knowledge. And again, the way in which she was killed shows that inherent hatred that is being expressed on victims. And those are just two that have come to light. And this is within the first 10 days of June. And in both cases, we have Naledi, whose 3 children that are between 2 and 6 years old, possibly going to be traumatized for the rest of their life because of this vicious crime that is happening not only on their mother, but on women in our society. As we saw in that vigil, groups and groups and groups of people came together to stand and say enough is enough. And actually, we must be scared as a society. We must stop.
But the reality is, it's not the first time. Yeah, it's not the first time we have women standing up to say enough is enough. I was looking at those live visuals out of Middlelands. You see majority, if not all, of the attendees there are women. So Tabiso was even saying, I reported that it's a bit difficult for him as a man to be there and trying to understand. And you've also mentioned the fact that people are still trying to understand what may be happening. What is there to understand, Ngaa, when we speak about gender-based violence? Because it's been there. Women have stood up to say enough is enough. The president also came in to come up with a plan on gender-based violence. So what more can be done? Because it looks like we've gone back to square one.
You're right in saying we've gone back to square one. If anything, we've possibly regressed past square one. And, it's a complex dynamic when we start to talk about violence itself, especially in an intimate context. But the president called in November, like you rightfully said, that we will take a strong stance as community. There's only so much that can be written for people to adhere to, and then the problem will go away. So what we need to do is go even backwards and dig deeper and start to understand, why do we have such... It's not a small kind of act against someone. It's a vengeful act. It takes a level of disregard for humanity to be able to execute the type of violence we have seen, especially in a lot of GBV cases, but particularly in these two. And if we start to say that it's an issue of the justice system, we're taking away what contributes to the perpetrators. We're taking away what contributes to the victims being in situations where they may find themselves constantly victimized. And, larger and larger and larger numbers of women come out and stand against this, but we need to include men in these conversations. There is a few men that I've seen in that video in your crossing, but we need to have this conversation, not saying you are the perpetrator or we don't want you in this conversation, you don't belong, but really dig deeper as mothers, as women, as men, as brothers, as sisters, before we even want the police to do something, because this is happening between people, individuals and community. And then it extends, and we want to be policed, and our nation needs to have different policies put into place. But on the ground, what is happening on the ground?
So, in Tshegofatso's case, we know that the boyfriend was taken in for some questioning, but no one has been arrested thus far. And in Naledi's case, we know that the husband handed himself over to the police. So one of the ladies there in Middlelands just said that the justice system is flawed. This once again paints a picture about how women feel regarding the justice system, how unsafe they feel in South Africa. And we do know that that is one of the pillars that was to be addressed by the gender-based violence plan as unveiled by President Ramaphosa.
I couldn't have said it better, that the justice system is flawed. If we look at the entry points of the justice system, that's SABC, when somebody is arrested, that is the first place where they need to establish trust for victims, establish trust for communities, and really do a thorough investigation. And then it builds up to the NPA, and it builds up, and we begin to go to trial and, those kind of things. But if it doesn't happen, and in a conversation we had yesterday, I did mention that if somebody has been seen, the boyfriend, yes, has been taken into custody, but as the last person to be seen with Tshegofatso before she was found dead, that is the starting point to find how and what happened to her. In the case of Naledi, someone is now within the policing system, so it means they have entered the justice system. That system is now activated. We have cases where it has taken 5 years for something to be finalized. Now, as a woman or as a victim or as a mother or somebody who has to go through that system, you begin to lose heart when you're encouraged to go and report the violence that has been perpetrated on you. At the SABC, you see that the victim or the perpetrator is being treated in what seems to be a more justful way than you are as the victim. It's very difficult for women, for children, for anyone to go and open a case, especially where violence is the factor and where abuse is a factor, a degrading level of abuse. So the way the justice system moves is actually perpetrator-centric. It seems to favor the perpetrator. Now, when this man goes in, he can be released and go home, and the police will go and look for the next possible suspect while somebody carries on with their life. And yet, Tshegofatso's family is mourning her death, the death of her unborn child. So, in its entirety, the justice system, at whatever level, doesn't move as swiftly as it should to ensure that the victims get the justice that they deserve.
All right, Ngaa, that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Ngaa Murombedzi is advocacy manager from Women and Men Against Child Abuse, giving their reaction to both the death of Tshegofatso Pule and Naledi in the Western Cape, who was allegedly killed by his husband. All right, that's where we'll leave it for this hour. Let's take a quick break. I'll see you right at the top of the hour with more news here on SA Today. Stay with us.